you are more resilient than you'll ever believe. It would be sheer resiliency. That every individual has a level of resiliency in their life. Every individual has a level of bounce back. Every individual has a level of I'm down, but I'm about to come up. Every individual has a level of you can hurt me, but you can't kill me in them, but they can only find that when they experience hell.
You are now tuning in to the Going North podcast with your host, best-selling author and professional speaker and member of the John Maxwell team, Dominic Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday we're going to hear the voice of a different author sharing their gifts, stories, and expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, where we bring you extraordinary humans who are ordinary just like you and me, doing awesome things around the globe. Today is no different because we're in the era of returning guests. And this one's from the wonderful city of charm and crime known as Baltimore. This awesome author right here is a licensed therapist, broadcast journalist, radio host, and motivational speaker that has a passion to speak on being broke but not broken. That's what I'm talking about, baby. And we don't believe in broke right here. We believe in prosperity, baby. And this wonderful author right here, he desires to speak with at-risk youth and helps to redirect them north based on his life experiences of being shot, battling and overcoming alcoholism, and growing up in a single-parent household. This persistent human being has the determination that has initiated his personal development of an unending self-education, which has distinguished him as an authority on mental health. And you're probably wondering who this wonderful returning guest is today. It's the one, the only, dapper man himself, Rashad Bowtie Mills. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. And I forgot I am a returning guest. I guess I'm in a special category, so I really appreciate that. I'm a two-time offender in a good way.
Oh man, I'm probably gonna be using that one in the future. Oh man, when I get some more guests there, I guess it's gonna be. Oh man, glad to have you back, man.
Thank you for having me back. It's been a long road. Thank you so much for having me back and opening up your podcast. And congratulations to you as well on the success of your podcast. In addition to that, you are a two-time author, and I see that you are experiencing success. So congrats to you, my brother.
Thanks a bunch, man. I'm just glad that the second book finally came out, and it's like folks are like, all right, so when's the third one coming out? I'm like, oh come on, man. Come on, man.
Let me just get through number 2 first. Right, yeah. So I've actually experienced that of late, which is something that I never thought that people would ask me, because I never thought that I would be an author, and certainly not under these circumstances. But people said, Rashad, the first book, great. When is the next one? When is the sequel? When is the spinoff? And I'm like, well, let me have 45 days with this one first, and then we'll move on. But, yeah, I know those questions. I know how they come at you.
Yeah, man, it's like folks read them faster than you write them. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, yeah, it's done, baby. All right, time to take a break. And you just be chilling in the hammock somewhere, and someone just poke you on the shoulder. Hey, man, thanks for autographing this book, man. Hey, when your second one coming out? And it's been like 36 hours. You like, oh, come on, man. I appreciate you, but give me 45 days.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think and I know we didn't plan to start here, but I think that really speaks to the idea that people don't know how much that actually goes into writing a book. I think as the typical consumer, which I've been for years, reading, hundreds of books throughout the course of my lifetime, I just buy the book, order the book. Now it's be at Amazon.com. Typically, you have Prime, so you get the book. It seems like 3 hours later, right? And you just delve into the book, but you really don't have a real idea of how much work that goes into the book from the back end perspective. The back end perspective. Number one, every author, they're telling a story, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, but they have this story and the work that goes into it. Whether it's they did old school methods, what I call the old school method, like we were in school. You write this outline and you have all of this stuff, or you did like I did for my first project, the nature of my story. Like I literally just sat down and wrote because the story was so fresh and ingrained in my mind that I didn't have to think on a great level. I just began to write. And I don't think that people have a real perspective of how much work goes into a book. And that's why, you and I will get those questions. You've been receiving them far longer than I have, but those questions of when is the next one, I'm like, if you only knew how much that goes into the book. And then here's the other thing, and maybe I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but here's the other thing that was so shocking to me is that I never knew how much that you have to invest and reinvest in the book. So, I'm under the impression that Rashad can sell some books, and, Rashad is just skipping along to the bank, depositing, and Rashad has, created another source of income, which, in fact, I have. But within that process, like, you're always putting back into the book. So one of the things that I just realized is that I had to take some money from the first round of the books to put back into this, to buy certain things, to buy posters, and, you have food and this and that, and you want to have, you want to make this very special. And then after that, like literally after, I would say probably an hour after I leave my own book launch, because I understand that this is an incredible business of books, I know the way my mind will work, and hopefully I can completely enjoy the experience, but I'll know, and my mind will be working and will say, Rashad, guess what? How many books did you sell today? Now you need to go ahead and order some new books. And I think when people, just say, when is the next one, they don't have any idea of how much goes into it. And, sleepless nights, I'm sure you've probably experienced that at some point during your career as an author.
Oh, yeah.
But sleepless nights, like writer's block. Like I went through a spell, and I don't know about you, but I went through a spell where when I couldn't write, I felt like I would jump through different genres of music. So at one point I was going like old school hip hop. And like literally I would sit I made my bedroom into an office. I'm like, I don't need to sleep. Took my bed down, went to old consignment shops, got a chair, a desk. I said, we're going to do it. And I would have on a hat, like a knit hat rolled up like Marvin Gaye. And I was just like in the zone. And I went like, it's kind of funny because I went through different spells. And one of those spells was, it was like old school hip hop, and I could write to that. And then I went through a spell of like jazz, and I could write to that. And then I went through a spell of like pop rock. I can write like classic pop, and I can write through that. And like classic R&B. And it was like the music really was like sustaining me. So it's really interesting, really, really interesting.
Yo, dude, that is so powerful right there. And you touched on something very, very true, man. It's like, yeah. You think it's all glitz and glamour. It's like, hey, so all these books, man. And it's like you got to buy more books and all the stuff for it. And you got to put money back into this business to keep it afloat. It's like, you got to try to make the money back for the publishing and the printing and the promotion. And you got to keep yourself on top of people's minds. And yeah, in this age, it's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do because everybody is doing almost the same thing depending on the space you're in with social media. So it's like, you're so right there. It's like, yeah, people see the glory, but they need to know the story too.
Yeah. That's the powerful part about it. But one of the things I noticed is that when you and I'm curious as your take on it because you're a two-time author. I'm a two-time author. I have a book and a workbook, but you're a two-time author in terms of, doing it over a longer period. I'm curious to get your take on it. Is I don't introduce myself now as a speaker or licensed clinical professional counselor first. The first thing that I tell people is that I'm an author. And when I say the average person, meaning the average person that hasn't sat down and put together a book, it is an incredibly different feel when you say author. Like, it's a different feel. Like, I've been many places and, what do you do? And I'll say, this or that. Speaker, oh, what do you speak about? And it's one thing, oh, you're a therapist. Oh, that's great. But when I tell people I'm an author, the feel becomes completely different. And it feels like way instantaneously. So, quick example, I was at the supermarket yesterday, and I ran into, oddly enough, a young lady from Toastmasters. And she said, Rashad, are you still speaking? I said, I am, just not in the format of Toastmasters. I just released a book. And, she stopped, and her mouth dropped. And it was like, oh, really? Like an author. And it was like, wow. And, before I can even blink, she said, well, is the book on Amazon? I said, sure, of course. But I have some copies with me. How much? And I told her before I know it, she said she wanted one and I was signing her book. And it's just like a different feel. So now I walk around with certain things. I walk around with several Sharpies. Anything that I keep a Sharpie on me, and I also keep a square on me, right, for people that want to pay the haircut. So it's different when you're like an author. People receive you differently because, I don't know the numbers on it, but I know I'm inclined to believe that not a great percentage of people are actually authors. And when you see an author, I think it's a high level of respect that's associated with it.
Yeah, you're right about that, because it's almost kind of like the getting a college degree before, I guess, 1995, I guess. It's like you're basically showing that you're committing yourself to something, and it just shows that you're dedicated, and the fact that you actually put pen to paper to publish something, because I'm pretty sure you probably had those days in school when you had those papers and folks hated to write papers, and then you be hating to write them, and then you just be staying up all night to write them, and it's like you wrote a whole book. It's like I hated writing 5 to 10 pages. Like, you wrote a whole book. So that's probably another part of it too. The other factor too is probably another reason why it's got to see it as a higher regard. Yeah, man.
But it's funny that you mentioned that because, like, again, I don't know about you. Like, I'm a new author, but in school, I hated writing papers. I absolutely dreaded it. I thought it was awful. I thought it was one of the worst assignments a teacher can give. I really did, because I've always considered myself a speaker first, even in grad school. If it was, Rashad, you have the option to write a one-page paper or speak for 2 hours, I'm going to say speak for 2 hours, because writing completely got me out of my comfort zone. And that's the thing about the writing process that I really did like. I mean, initially I hated it. Toward the end, I really hated it. But I began to like it because I know writing was getting me out of my comfort zone. Because as a speaker, I'm in my comfort zone. I can literally be put in a stadium right now with 50,000 people, a microphone, a time, a topic, and let's go. I'm in my comfort zone. But writing took me out of my comfort zone completely, and that's one of the things that, looking back at this whole project now, I'm grateful for, because it put me in a new space to get outside of my comfort zone. So I know that feeling of, hey, telling the world via, social media, however, my book is out. It gives me a different feel to keep going on as a writer and to improve as a writer. So it was definitely a different feel. But while I was going through it, I dreaded the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. I totally sympathize with you, man, because this is like, with the book, the good thing is there's really no real grade that can keep you from out of college or whatever, and you can basically speak your book into existence. It's your book. You have the control over it, as opposed to a paper. It's like, they pull out that bloody red pen, and then out of nowhere. So I should comma he and all of this stuff. It's like, yeah, it's a whole different journey. And that actually is probably, you probably already answered already, but it's probably one of the questions I like to ask returning guests is, what skill have you sharpened or at least learned the most since publishing your work?
Wow, that's a great question. And I would answer that. I think the greatest skill that I've been able to, I don't even know if I would use the term sharpen, but I think the greatest skill that I was able to develop is patience. It's patience because for the majority of my life, I've been an incredibly impatient person. And I think, when we'll get into the experience as well, to serve as the title of the book, I developed patience then, and I developed patience then on a greater scale. But writing the book furthered my level of patience, because I knew it wasn't that I was going to come in the house, I should say, on a Monday, and I was going to knock out a 150-page book. I knew that I wasn't going to send it to, the editor, and it would be done overnight. It would be done. The edits would be completed in a day or two. I knew that wasn't the case. And as I gradually went on with each level of the writing process, I saw that I had to develop patience, because it was like, the analogy was like, it's this great Thanksgiving meal, and I just couldn't put it in the microwave. I literally had to buy the turkey, season up the turkey, inject the turkey with the seasonings, and I had to cut up the onions if I wanted to put those in with the turkey. I had to prepare the macaroni and cheese. I just couldn't microwave it, because I understand the importance of, if it's done too soon, it's not going to taste right. And I don't want people that eat something, the taste is not right. So I think patience for me, man, just understanding it. There were some nights I would wake up at 1 o'clock and write. Some nights I would wake up at 4 o'clock and I would write. Some nights I would be at work and I would be finished with the client, and I would have an additional time to the next client, and I would write. Sometimes I would drive down the highway and I would pick up my phone and I would send myself a recorder, make sure you include this. Like, all of those things were in this process. And for me, I'm an individual that I don't like process, because my mind is like, when I get fixated on something, like, I want to make this thing happen. But just the patience part of it, and even, going back and forth with the editors, and, I'll be candid, like I told you, this is the week of my book launch, and I went back, I had the book that's published, and I had to go back and get some revised work done. So it's all patience.
That's right. My man's a therapist, man. Had all the patience, baby. That's right. That's what I'm talking about. But no, seriously though, you're definitely right though. That patience piece is a big piece, man. You ain't lying about that, man. And you're right, man. It's like you can't make this turkey come out and just put it in the microwave with no onions, no seasoning, and hope it come out good. You have a dead bird that's cold on the table, and people look at you like you're crazy. You can't have that. Mm-hmm. And the vegans will be like, "Ha ha! We told you." Now let's pull out these greens. But no. Yeah, man. That is definitely good lesson for others to learn too. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's easier to get your book out to as many people as you want, but at the same time, it's like there's still that time of patience, that incubation time, where you just have to be patient and actually know what you're dealing with, and just being comfortable with that process. And heck, like with the editing too, it's like, heck, like myself and others, they have gone through the same thing. It's like you reread your book like 3 or 4 times, like, oh man, you still have errors, and then someone else catches them. It's like, you know what, fudge, let's go and make these edits again, and then hopefully it'll be out right. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not really fully done yet, because you said yourself, still got another book cooking.
Yeah, so my goal for this one is obviously to maximize this, completely maximize this. And I haven't thought if, I would write along the way while I'm still maximizing this, because, and I'm sure momentarily we'll get into the story, but I think I have a great, I would say a spinoff, not necessarily a sequel to this book, but I have a great spinoff to this book that I'm actually taking notes down now. But I don't know if I want to do that while I'm still pushing this book. But maybe I'll, wait till this book is, sort of, you'll never maximize it because it's your project and you can always benefit from it throughout the course of your lifetime. But, completely, like, I guess, drain myself in this instance of this book before I pick up and do something else. So that's something I'll think about. But right now, like, this is a newborn baby, and I just want to take care of it as much as possible right now.
There you go, man. Sounds like a plan. Just keep writing when you get the inspiration, and then, boom, when a year or so passes, you'll be like, yeah, I got this content ready, baby. That's right. Be like DJ Khaled for a moment. It's like if someone act up, I'm going to let one go. That's right. That's right. Another one. But, yeah, man, it's really interesting, too, because I remember the first time I had you on the podcast, you're about to release your book, Happy Hour, but then you had this powerful transformational experience, and it kind of went for a left turn for the better, and now it's the book called Inmate 458627. So what's the story behind the whole switch?
Great question. So, yeah, prior to writing this book, I was in the works of writing a book called Happy Hour. And as you mentioned earlier, one of the things that I'm incredibly fortunate of is that I've been able to beat alcoholism. So as of July the 18th, 2019, in a few weeks, I will be 4 years sober. Celebrating 4 years of sobriety is one of the things that I do brag about because I think that's a big thing to me. And as a speaker, I always want to make sure that, I tell people that in the appropriate, venues and the appropriate times to offer them encouragement, because that's one of the big things that people struggle with is, battling their own demons. So I was writing a book called Happy Hour. And as an alcoholic, one of the things that I wanted to do was take a spin to that negative part of my life and make it positive. So every week via social media, a motivational piece is called Happy Hour. Most people that are not familiar with me think it's just Rashad's motivational piece, Happy Hour. It has a much deeper meaning that every Friday at typically 5 o'clock, I was at a happy hour, right, drinking some form of liquor that was just had me in a bad place. But now it's every Friday. Typically I release it between 5 and 6 a.m., and now I'm motivating people. And I was writing a book based on my happy hour messages, like a motivational, compilation, if you will. And I wanted to have people to be able to look at that and just, whether they read one a day or one a week, whatever it looks like, and be able to be motivated and find that particular happy hour in their life. Interestingly enough, Dom, I could not get this book off the ground. Now, mind you, this book was based on messages that I had already completed verbally, and I'm just transcribing them into a written form. There was going to be some questions attached to it, so people can go back and really examine themselves. What am I doing that keeps me in a happy hour, or what am I not doing that keeps me away from finding the happiest hour of my life? I could not get this book off the ground, and I was just puzzled that I had put so much effort into it. I met with a fabulous editor. I mean, she was really good, and I just couldn't get this book off the ground. Throughout the course of time, while trying to get this book off the ground, I found myself dating a young lady at one of the local churches, which I'll never state because it's not the intention of it to, defame the individual or the church or anything of that nature. And I was dating a young lady for probably about 2 years. Just like with all relationships, we had an incredible honeymoon phase, and then some things started to turn sour. One of the things that began to turn sour was her, and I think I worded it in the book as her eagerness to assist the pastor with non-church related things. And I began to look at it as a therapist. I could say, well, Rashad, this is not right. And I could see through some things. And I could see through some of the lies, some of the games. And this particular pastor has a history of, for lack of a better term, being immoral in the sense of his sexual urges getting the best of him. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. And there was a part of me that said they had been intimate at some point. I don't know if it was while I was with her, but there was one thing that stood out in particular. She had told me one Saturday afternoon, I said, hey, we're going to get together like we would normally do, spend time together. She said, I have to go to the pastor's house. And I said, what? and she said to do his kid's hair. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's a non-church related issue. Why are you going there? And she actually went to his house and did his hair. I just said, that doesn't make sense to me. And she would get assignments within the church that no other person would get. Now, she's a minister. And I began to put 2 and 2 together, and I'm not the smartest guy in math, Don, but I would get 4. And I would get 4, but I would not, I guess for lack of a better term, I would not allow myself to leave the situation. Now, by all accounts, we were 2 broken people trying to be whole and be whole with the assistance of the other person. I was looking to her for validation. She was looking to me for validation. So you take 2 broken people that's trying to be whole, right? In a healthy relationship, 2 people need to be whole themselves and then come together. You can't have one person that's broken, but they're trying to get whole via the other person. It doesn't work that way. And the biggest thing that, we battled was this sort of relationship with this pastor. So there was one particular day, I kind of fast forward, after this honeymoon period had faded, I started to notice things about her that gave me an idea that she had maybe been experiencing some mental health challenges. And one day in particular, she was sitting on the edge of her bed, and she said, I just want to share with you something because you are a licensed clinical professional counselor. And she said, well, my sister has been diagnosed with bipolar, and I'm just telling you because you're a therapist. I've never told any other person. I said, okay. And there was a part of me looking back after the fact that says that was really her, but she was just in a space where she felt like she couldn't tell me. Like, I personally believe that was her battling a mental health illness, and she actually put it off on her sister. I began to see very erratic behaviors, behaviors that, very paranoid that I was cheating on her, behaviors like get out of my house and before I can get to the door, she's at the front door. I don't want you to leave. Very erratic behaviors. You're never there for me, which in turn I was. And by no means did Rashad play the role of an angel during the relationship. We probably argued. I probably was the cause of a lot of arguments. And then at that time, my communication style was more or less, let's talk everything out right now, as opposed to understanding the processing time that things need to be going through, right, even as a therapist. So all of these things combined, that was the day, it was actually Good Friday of last year. And, we had walked past each other in the church. We had had an argument the day before, because I always felt like that she wasn't as involved with me as I was involved with her. And we walked past each other in the church, didn't say a word. She was actually going to this pastor's office, like with these kind of, I would call like really janitorial style chores. And that just didn't make sense for me for a minister, particularly for a woman. And it was just, in my mind, I knew he was using her, and she loved it. And I think he manipulated her so well to think that he would marry her and be the first lady of the church. And I know it sounds like a Lifetime story, but it gets more interesting. So we walked past each other in the church. We didn't say a word. That night I was actually doing Uber, and I ran out of gas. And I had called her and said, hey, can you assist me, getting gas? She said, no, because you walked past me in church and didn't speak. And it actually made me livid. And I was like, wow, I'm really there for you all the time. And this is sort of the treatment that I get. So I got gas in my car. I went to her house and knocked on the door. She didn't answer. And then my frustration, I kicked her door, not to get in, but I was just really frustrated. And when I kicked the door, I got in my car and drove home because I was really upset. And I said, Rashad, what did you do? That wasn't the greatest thing to do. And in between the span of Friday night and Saturday morning, I called her on the phone about 40 times. I really, for lack of a better term, I really wanted to express my dissatisfaction. Like, I really wanted to express it. And not even dissatisfaction, I'm going to call it what it is, flat out anger. Like, I really wanted to give her some choice words because I was just so upset at that time. And I think part of me being upset, number one, it can't be justified, me calling that many times, but I think the other piece of the puzzle was at the time I began to sort of put some of the pieces together. And I was like, yeah, I knew they were messing around. Like, it felt like it was the culmination of everything coming together. And so the next morning I had called her, and I heard a voice in the background. And the voice said, well, what's his date of birth? And this was for some reason, this voice caught me off guard because it felt like it was the voice of authority. And we had gotten in arguments before, nothing physical of that nature. And she had mentioned, like the police, we keep arguing. I'll call the police on you. It's like, well, you're having a disagreement. So my intuition said, Rashad, drive past the police station in her neighborhood. I drove past the police station. Her car was there. And I said, well, this is really wild. So she's walking out of the police station. So I get out of my car and I said, hey, what the heck is going on? She runs in the police station as if I'm chasing her. So I walk in, and the officer says, well, you the guy that called her? Kept calling her. I said, yeah, it's me. She said, well, leave the police station. No problem. So I got in my car, and as I was like sort of about to exit the police station completely, she was in her car. So I pulled up next to her. She rolled down her window. I rolled down mine. I was like, well, can we talk? And we were like sort of talking. She was like, well, maybe we could talk later. I don't really want to talk now, okay? And when I blinked, I was like under arrest. 2 police officers ran out to my car, literally yanked me out of my car and locked me up, following charges: failure to obey a reasonable law, trespassing on government property, which in all actuality was correct because they told me to leave, and I sort of stayed there trying to talk to her, and then telephone misuse, which I've never heard of. So throughout the course of the next 4, listen, it gets more interesting. It definitely blew my mind because I never heard of a telephone misuse charge. So, mind you, we were still attending the same church for the next 4 or 5 months, not speaking to each other because she had a protective order against me. So by law, I couldn't speak to her. So we would walk past each other in church like it was like dirty looks. She had actually told the church security team that she had never knew me. And I was like, what do you mean? She had told them that I was a random stalker. Now, interestingly enough, the young lady who introduced me to her said, no, that's totally incorrect. They were in a 2-year relationship. So the church security team was like, wow, she is telling people that she doesn't know you at all. And I said, are you serious? And that was one of the first times where I said, this is really strange behavior. I've heard of horrific breakups, but not even owning to the fact that you knew me. To me, that was next level. And I began to think, this is really strange from a mental health perspective. So there was one time we used to frequent the same Starbucks that I was getting out of my car. I was actually going to one of my part-time jobs as a therapist at one of the juvenile facilities, and I saw her truck in front of the Starbucks, and I said, oh, man. I said, how is this going to work out? Because by law, I can't say anything to her. So I used my phone as like a distraction. I picked up my phone, and I acted as if I was actually texting somebody. And her truck stayed in front of the Starbucks. She watched me walk in, order my coffee, and as I'm coming out, I could see her quickly pull off. And in my mind, I think that really set her off as if to say, you don't even know me, because, if and I make this clear to everybody listening to this podcast, I don't know if she was ever officially diagnosed with anything, but I did quite a bit of research. A lot of the symptoms were consistent with borderline personality disorder, and one of the things that is a challenge for them is the fear of abandonment. And at that point, it felt like, and I'm only assuming that, oh, Rashad is not speaking to me at this point. When she initially saw me, she didn't, back away and pull out like in fear of my presence. No, she actually stood there, and I know that she knew that I saw her, and I just didn't pay her any attention because, again, I didn't know where she was mentally, and then the legal perspective was still hanging over my head. So we going through the church. I did find out, through trusted sources that her and this pastor had been intimate. Whether it occurred while I was with her, I don't know, but they were intimate before, and that was always one of the things that I said, if we're in a committed relationship, just let me know. Your past is your past. I have no problems with that. I just, want you to be honest. So that was devastating. And then the other devastating thing was I was teaching adult Sunday school every third Sunday. Not him personally, but somebody else came to me and said, well, the pastor said you can't teach Sunday school anymore. And that to me was like a direct jab to my heart because I knew it came from her. And she knew I loved teaching Sunday school. And I think that was like another way of her, like, I'm going to get back at him. And I really couldn't understand why because, we weren't saying anything throughout the church. And there were some days that I didn't pay her any attention. She didn't pay me any attention. But it got worse. And trying to actually go to church and worship while you're under this much stress, it wasn't a very conducive environment to be in. And the pastor's uncle, 90-year-old gentleman, great guy, he reminds me of sort of the old wise guy, right? He calls me to his house, and he says, man, I heard about the story, and I noticed you haven't been coming to church. And I kind of told him the story. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you something that is probably going to hurt you, but I think it'll help you in the long run as you kind of work your way around the situation, especially your mental. Because like at this point, Don, my mental health was gone. And I think one of the interesting things I really want people to understand from the book, how powerful mental health is, even if you are a practitioner. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor practicing every day, and I can lock in for 45 minutes to an hour every day, 8 hours a day, and help other people. But then I struggled with my own mental health. Like my coping skills were so unhealthy during this particular period of my life. I relied on not alcohol because that was the old coping skill. I relied on sugar. Like I was out of shape. I definitely wasn't running with Rashad that I'm doing now, running half a marathon like I did a month ago. I was completely out of shape, overweight, and every day I found myself in a store drinking a Pepsi, eating cookies and ice cream. That was my coping skill. I'm way to cope with it. There was many nights that I tossed and turned for hours, and I had to take sleeping medication, and I was like a zombie. So he said, man, you don't look the same. And he said, you were a pawn. And I said, well, I don't understand what you're saying. He said, do you play chess? And I said, very briefly. I was still working at the juvenile jail here in Baltimore. And I said, some of the young detainees taught me how to play. He said, you were like a pawn. A pawn in the game of chess is very expendable. She actually used you. It sounds like she used you to make the pastor jealous and make him want her. So you were being used the entire time. And as I look back, there were times I know I was being used. She would say, sit next to me on the front row where the ministers sit. And this was all in an effort to get his attention. One day I was leaving, and, he was shaking, congregant's hand as they exited the church. And he said, man, how are those twins doing? And I never knew he even paid attention that I had twins. And there were times that I know that, looking back, that she specifically tried to use me as the piece to get him to really be engaged with her, and he was simply using her the entire time. So it was like he's using her and she's using me, and that was one of the most difficult things I had to overcome, because I think the entire time I was manipulated from day one. But here's the greater perspective. Throughout this process, I began to say, Rashad, what is it about you? Where's your level of self-esteem at? What is it about you that you can be in an unhealthy, toxic relationship? And again, I wasn't an angel, but you allowed yourself to stay in it. So thinking bigger picture, I had to say, what is it about you? So fast forward to June the 19th, headed to court, misdemeanor charge. The day before, I was teaching public speaking to a major organization in D.C., the Gaylord Hotel. I had a presentation on the screen, huge screen. I had this summer that was really, I had a bunch of professional engagement. And I thought this was going to be one of the greatest summers ever, because I was still moving in the right direction professionally, despite what was going on in my personal life. And I went into court. She walked into the courtroom. She brought her daughter in the courtroom, which I thought was very odd. And I couldn't understand that at all. And I sat in the front of the courtroom so I wouldn't make any eye contact with her, because I couldn't understand where she was mentally. And I didn't want to, make any eye contact. And I didn't want her to, he looked at me and I could kind of feel he's mad at me. So I'm a really be in this courtroom out to get him, because I think that encounter at the Starbucks, I think that's what really ultimately happened. So we were like, last case called. I had a public defender because it's excessive telephone use. That's the charge. And I'm like, this is misdemeanor. My public defender says, Rashad, you are, a man of the community. I had literally 2 days before going to court, preached my first 2 sermons. It's no way that Rashad is going to jail. I'm working in the jail. I'm working with young people. I'm an advocate of the young people in the community. This whole things that I've always done. There's no way I'm going to jail. So the judge hears the case, and at one point, Dom, the courtroom is laughing. The judge says, Rashad, you're a therapist. I said, yes, Your Honor. He said, I have some guys in lockup that may benefit from your service. And I said, for the right hourly price, I'll see him right now. Courtroom is laughing, judge is laughing. And that night, interestingly enough, it was a Tuesday, so I had the Rashad Mills Show, which airs on Awesome God Radio. Oh, man, I'm going to do my show. Actually, that week, I was being honored with an award for the work that I do in the community, particularly with the young men. And just, again, I'm just ready to think about, I'm actually going to go out and buy a new iPhone that day. I had this whole plan. And one of the things that I'd always said is I wanted to apologize in an arena where my words wouldn't be misconstrued, okay? So I told the public defender in advance toward the end of it, I want to apologize. So I whispered in his ear, asked Your Honor, can I apologize? Sure. So my apology, I'm looking directly at the judge because she's sitting behind me, and I didn't want to turn because of the nature of the case and look at her. I thought that would be inappropriate. So I'm apologizing, but I'm just looking in the direction of the judge. The state's attorney was, quiet the entire time. At this point, he jumps up and says, Your Honor, if his apology was sincere, he would have looked at her. The judge says, no, I disagree, simply because he didn't want to probably turn and look at her, and he probably didn't want to turn his back to me. The judge was totally okay with that. So at this point, the state's attorney's demeanor, and in the book I worded it as, I specifically remember, his demeanor shifted from docile to Doberman Pinscher. He became like a vicious guard dog. He told her, he said, young lady, come on up and tell us about Mr. Mills. Give a statement about him. And she gave the statement that I was everything but a child of God. And I whispered to my public defender, I said, this isn't good. So the judge says, Mr. Mills, for all the things that you do, all the things that your public defender highlighted, speaker, man of God, father of twin girls, all of these things, I look at you differently now after hearing from her. Interestingly enough, I was with her for 2 years. She had had several deaths in the family. I'd never seen this young lady cry. During this particular day in court, I seen more tears than I could have imagined. I was shocked. I was shocked that she could get to the point of crying. And she cried, and it was just, she said, I brought my daughter to court to show her how a man shouldn't treat a woman. And I said, wow. And I was in shock. And at that point, my mind said, this is all calculated. It's all calculated. It's all calculated. And just a side note, this can never be confirmed, but I believe that the pastor of the church, because she viewed me as a threat to him, I believe that he actually told her to take your daughter to court. I believe that he's a very manipulative gentleman. I believe that he told her to play it out this way in court. And the judge says, Rashad, I look at you differently. I'm going to give you 3 years. 3 years in jail. And I said, what? I'm going to suspend 2.5. And in my mind, I'm saying, okay. My mind is processing very quickly, but I'm saying, okay, you're suspending 2.5. Then he says 6 months, and I'm expecting probation before judgment, or probation. He said, I'll give you 6 months jail time. Bailiff cut him. And in my book, I worded it as, when I was walking to the public defender jumps up and says, let's do an appeal bond, he said, denied. So the public defender is very adamant and said, this is not the kind of guy that should be in jail. This is not the kind of guy that should be in jail. He's not your jail guy. Judge says, take him away. And I remember in the book, Dom, as I'm walking to the elevator to go to what they call process, like your holding cell, to start the processing, I remember saying, God, I trust you, but what about my house, my car, my kids, and my life? But I trust you. So in the midst of my world literally being shaken up, within a matter of 2 minutes, the judge kind of giving his final verdict, if you will, there was a level of like chaos. There was a level of uncertainty that was going inside of me, but at the same token, it was also a level of peace. It was like, God, I trust you, but what in the heck am I trusting you for? That's why I was inmate 458627 in the Baltimore County Detention Center from June the 19th, 2018 to September the 27th, 2018, and did 101 days in jail on the charge of telephone misuse. The other charges were dropped. That's what I did. Nothing physical. And now, again, I want everybody listening to this podcast to understand that I accept full accountability. I lost my cool, and I called her 40 to 50 times. Literally, I wanted to give her a piece of my mind, but I can't justify it, and I will never justify it. My actions are, my actions were wrong. They will remain wrong until the day that I die. But do I think I should have been in jail because of that? I would say no. But here's the beauty of the whole story, and this is the beauty of the book, and I would encourage your listeners to purchase the book. The book is on Amazon.com. There's a link on, all of my social media, which we'll talk about later on. But I found myself in the worst period of my life. I found myself. I discovered so many things about Rashad. And if you'll notice the verbiage that I'll use, I went through periods while I was in jail initially that I was still mad at her. But I discovered so much about myself. And because of the craziness of this situation, looking higher level as a believer, somebody who loves God and has a relationship with God, I said, God, you specifically sat me in jail. You sat me in jail because you know there's certain parts of Rashad that I have to clean up, to, number one, become a better person, that I have to clean up because I know, God, you want to elevate me to another level. Like I never would have thought that I would be on your podcast again talking about a book, that I'm an author. I never would have imagined in a million years that people would be calling me saying, Rashad, I want you to personally autograph my book. I never would have thought that. I never would have thought that I could have survived jail. Like I've had family members be in jail and friends, and I never thought that would be my fate one day. But I think God he intentionally set me aside because he knew something greater could come out of this. And the greater thing is now I can reach a much greater audience. My level of humility, and I tell people, maybe a lot of people couldn't see it if you weren't around me a lot, my ego, Don, was the size of South America. Like my ego was huge, bro. Huge. And when I first got on the speaking circuit, I was always worried about the people that were impacted by my message. But there was a part of Rashad that just loved being on the stage, you know. Now it's completely different. So I learned so many things about myself. I developed a true relationship with God from a jail cell. I understand what's important. There was moments that I woke up one day and I reached over on a locker because in jail you have limited space. You don't have walk-in closets. You have a locker. And I reached over at my locker to grab my phone. And my bunk buddy said, what are you reaching for, Mills? I said, my phone. And he was like, yeah. He laughed. He said, man, you still going through withdrawal. I don't have my phone. And then I realized it's not important. Like I realized, like, what's really important. What's really important is inner peace. What's really important is family and friends that came out and colleagues that supported me. Every Sunday I was getting visits. Every Friday night I got visits throughout the week from my colleagues in the mental health field. Some of them wrote me letters on a consistent basis, encouraging remarks. I had an aunt that would send me little positive notes. That was important. Posting on social media, that really isn't important. And if it wasn't for my business, I wouldn't even be on social media. Sometimes I can't stand it. So I developed all of these things via a jail cell. I never would be the person that I am now if I didn't go to a jail cell. I never would have the level of faith that I have in God now in the jail cell. Like I have this level of faith now, Dom, that tells me I can literally do anything. And I'm talking about anything.
Amen.
Like I believe if I ran for president, I believe I can win now. Because I believe once you survive the most horrific experience of your life, and it's not like that I even knew that this could happen. So it's not like I could have my affairs in order. Like literally that day I'm like, oh, wow, I'm in jail. Like how are my kids going to get to summer camp? I was responsible to do that. Like how do I pay, my bills, my rent? How do I do this? How do I keep my car? Like how do I do this? And God worked all of this out. So jail was great. I just discovered so much. And one of my bunk buddies, interestingly enough, God had placed me around some people that were different than me. One of my bunk buddies probably had the most impact on me, middle-aged white guy. I labeled him in the book as under the name of Austin. He knew the Bible like nobody's business, back and forth. And it felt like wherever I would go, the different units, he would like be on that unit. And then one day he pulled me aside. He said, Rashad, I can see you're a great guy. He said, my wife, I actually gave your name to my wife, and she watched some of your stuff on social media. So you're a fabulous speaker. I know you're a man of God. And he called me a God-fearing hothead.
Wow.
And I said, what did you just call me? He said, you are a God-fearing hothead. He said, I know you love God, but you're a hothead. And he said, before God takes you to that next level on bigger stages, you can't go the way you're going now. So this jail, he said, I watch how you talk to the guard. And at one point, I began to assimilate to the jail culture. And when I say the jail culture, like I had no respect for some of the COs. Some of them were incredibly nasty. But my level of, remember what I talked about in patience earlier? He said, what is the biggest skill that I learned or had to sharpen? Man, being in jail, you can't go anywhere. You can't get out of your particular unit without somebody popping a lock. You have to wait. You have to wait for somebody Saturday night at 7 o'clock to come get you for a haircut. You have to sign your name on a sheet to get a haircut. You have to sign a sheet in order to be taken to church service. If you need to go to medical, you have to put in a request. Everything is by request. And you're waiting on somebody. You're waiting on somebody to bring you food. Like it's just the process of waiting. So I learned so much about myself in the jail cell, and it's by far the greatest 101 days of my life. And it lets me know I can do anything. And it also lets me know there were some challenges since I've been out, putting my life back together. I'll be honest, like financially, getting back into, what I do as a therapist, building my client base again, getting speaking engagements again. But I always said to myself, it may be hard, but nothing is hard as going to jail. If I survive what I call hell on earth, I can survive anything. I can survive anything, and I know the formula. I've developed the formula. Trust God and then put in the work, and you have to be mentally strong. And I never, toward the end of my jail stay, I stopped saying, God, I don't understand this. Why me? I stopped saying that. I began to say, what do you want me to learn from it? And that changed my perspective. What do you want me to learn? And I began to hear, Rashad, I need you to get away from this toxic relationship. She wasn't very supportive. You couldn't have gotten to the level that I want to have you at on bigger stages, signing books, impacting people, if you were still in that relationship, because she was trying to bring you down, and then you didn't really understand yourself. So my level of humility now is much greater. Somebody can call me down to speak at an event where there's 5 people, and I'm so humble. If they call me to speak at an event at over 1,000, I'm humble. Like it doesn't, my level of humility is any opportunity that I get, I'm humble because I remember being in a jail cell wondering if somebody ever would call me to speak again. I remember questioning, how do I, with this image as a man of the community, how do I bounce back from this? So that's my story, and luckily the pieces are still building, but I'm building, and it's coming together as God would have it to be. And this book is sort of the finishing touches on how you rebound from hell. So when I got out, when I was in there, guys were talking about, what are you going to do when you come home? Everybody was having these questions. Some guys, I'm gonna go, get drunk or get high. I'm gonna chase women. And they said, Mills, what's your plan? I said, I'm gonna write a book. I said, you're not gonna write a book. I said, I'm gonna write a book. And every day as I begin to memorize Bible verses, and I would write them down. And the routine that I have now, get up before I touch social media or do anything, I pray and I journal. And I developed that routine in jail from watching somebody else. And I would just journal. And I would begin to, one of my initial thoughts was to do a motivational mixtape with the same name, Inmate 458627. I said, no, let's do a book. I can impact more people. And as I began to write the book, as a therapist, the process was maddening at times, but it was also healing. It was maddening because I had to relive it. There was a trauma piece associated where I had to relive this whole experience. But as I started to write more, it became healing. It became healing for me to write it. And one of the, and I know I've been running my mouth, and I'll stop after this. The other piece to it that really was beneficial for me, there was an older gentleman in there for something that occurred with him and his wife. And he said, Rashad, well, you have to forgive her. He said, because you didn't have to call her. You didn't have to kick her door. And I said, you're absolutely right. And for somebody else to tell me those words, it was like I needed to hear that because I was always accountable, but that placed more accountability on me. And he said, you just have to forgive her because God forgave you. And then I began to go back and think of women in relationships that I used for my own personal gain. And I wrote that in the book, and it was so healing for me to get to a place of, wow, to say I wasn't the best person in previous relationships. And it was really healing for me. And That's why it's in the title, Love, Hurt, and Healing, because I healed, and right now I'm probably in the healthiest relationship that I've ever been in because I know, what to look for, and I'm in a much better place. This accountability piece. And jail was the greatest thing ever for me. And I can say this now, I'm so thankful for it. I couldn't say it when I was in there, right? Because I was still developing. And right, and here's the last piece that I want people that listen to your podcast. And again, thank you so much for having me on. Is one of the things that I do as a therapist, but I'm also in this place as a speaker that I'm doing more and more. Is I always tell people, have a good memory. And when I say have a good memory, I don't want you to get stuck on your trauma. But I always want people to say, if I made it past that, then I can get through this. And then also, what did that experience allow me to learn? So I'm going to be honest, like yesterday, it was incredibly hot. And I was out, I was at Morgan State University trying to make some connections in terms of the book, and I sold a book to a brother. And as I'm signing the book, it's 95 degrees. I have on, my typical attire, dress shirt, bow tie. And I said, and it's so hot. But then as I walked back to my car, I had this interesting laugh, and I laughed to myself. And the laughter was, this time last year, I was in a jail cell. I would have loved to be out experiencing this heat. So when I go through things now, I say it's all relative because it's a level of humility and it's a level of appreciation. Like you'll never hear me complain. I typically eat the same food every day, turkey, bacon, egg, and cheese with toast. And maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I said I was about to say to myself, I am tired of eating this. But then I remember what jail food was like. And then it was like, man. So it's this level of just unbelievable appreciation. My kids some days love them to death. They argue with each other like Democrats and Republicans, and it drives me nuts, Dom. But I always say to myself, I remember being in jail for 3 months and I couldn't see them. And there were times that I would have loved to hear their voice. So it gives me a greater perspective. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, sticking to it like honey and glue, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Man, powerful story, man. Glad he only. I mean, personally, I would have preferred no months from the outside looking in, but the whole aftermath looking back, it's like, you know what? It's like, man, it's powerful. I can remember 3 months ago, he first told me about it. I was like, man, I didn't even know what the heck happened. It's like, no wonder my man was missing. It's like, well, I just had to go through that process, man. Glad you made it out alive, man. Glad you made it out alive there, man.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's an interesting part of my life, and I'm grateful for it. I'm actually grateful for it, and then I'm grateful that God chose me for the experience because there were things that happened that it's like, Rashad, you were meant to be in jail because it just sparked an incredible, I keep using these words, appreciation, humility, and growth that is going to take me to the next level. So in actuality, I am a Christian, and this is not preaching. That's not where I'm going, but it's a Bible verse, and that I've always had the Bible verse, had it tattooed on my leg years ago after I was shot, and it's what you thought, literally, I just forgot it, what the devil meant for harm, God meant for good to accomplish the things being done now to save many lives. So I really felt like that was a part of it that was like, I'm a really like, not physically, but I'm gonna like kill Rashad mentally by jail. Nah, God was like, nah, choose Rashad. Choose Rashad because I know Rashad will come out better. So it's awesome. It's awesome. I'm doing things now I never thought that I would do. Literally, I'm signing books. It's like I'm signing books. And so far the responses have been like great. Like, thank you for allowing me to go on this emotional roller coaster with me. Thank you for being vulnerable and open. These are some of the things that I'm just remembering people have sent me. Like, I shed tears with this. I had mothers saying, my son needs to get this. My son needs to get this so he doesn't make mistakes. Like, my son needs to see this so he can look out for signs of a toxic relationship. I've had women down that says, I'm glad that I got this book because I got angry last week and called my boyfriend 50 times to curse him out.
Oh.
Right? Yeah.
Oh,
so I just think that I think God was able to use me, and again, it's great, and I know we're pressed for time, but I want to say one thing too. In closing, is that I don't harbor any hate or ill will or any malice toward this young lady toward the end of my book. And I actually have a copy of the book now right with me. And one of the things that I was so incredibly challenged with, I worded that way, is I want this book that if the young lady picks it up, that she can say, number one, everything is factual, which in fact it is, and then two, he's not throwing any shots at me. That's why I'll never mention the pastor's name, the church, or her name. It's not my intent. That wasn't my intent. My intent was to promote growth and healing. And this is how I ended the book in terms of the acknowledgement section. And I'm sharing this part with your listening audience simply to talk about the growth. And when we grow as people, we can get to this point that growth is possible. To my former friend, when I met you, I could not have predicted this ending in a million years. This was not my intention to have things happen this way, but I found understanding in the following, and it's a Bible verse, Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I thank God for revealing the purpose of this to both of us. I pray that you receive this in the right way. I thank you for allowing me to discover the broken and damaged parts that lie within me as a result of our relationship. More importantly, I thank God for your healing and the beautiful life you will have thereafter. And I wanted to make sure that, and who knows if she'll ever read it, that I'm okay with that, right? Because a lot of people have asked me, like even while I was in jail, I had guys ask me, like, are you mad at her? Do you forgive her? And I said, of course, because I played my part. I think there were some things done intentionally to bring me down. But again, bringing me down only boosts me up even more. But it's no ill will. And that's one of the things. Because I know people are challenged with forgiving other people. And that's one of the things that I was just adamant. I wanted to make sure that it was people knew about that in the book. So
that's right, especially about that excessive calling. I didn't even know that was a charge. I'm like, what the heck? How the heck?
I can tell you that it is officially a charge.
Oh, yeah.
Let me be the first to tell you.
You can tell, right?
Let me be the first to tell you, my dear brother. Let me be the first to tell you. As a result of it, I got a book. So it is real. Indeed real. It is indeed real.
Oh, man. That's right. Moral of the story, be humble and don't call your spouse or significant other, your partner, a bunch of times in the same day. Because now they know they have a weapon. Oh, my gosh.
It's control your emotions or they will be controlled for you.
Yeah, that's the cleaner way of saying it.
Control your emotions. They have a whole system set up that if you don't control them, somebody is right there to help you. So.
Yeah, and people like helping people, and it might not be the help you want either.
Yeah, trust me. But and I know, we're up against time, but there's so many lessons out of this that I just thank God for so many lessons. That here's the other piece to the puzzle, and after this I really shut up. The other piece to the puzzle is for men of color, and I'm just going to call it what it is. I'm not going to be too technical. I'm going to call it exactly what it is, for black men.
There you go.
Literally that day, I watched countless men of color go to jail on charges that you wouldn't think a man should go to jail for. Here's the other thing. Watch this. Men of color that are educated, right? A man of color that's educated, you are, or you have, I word it that way, you have a higher chance of going to jail once you're in front of a judge simply because of your status. So, and this is what I want your listeners to understand. This right now I'm speaking to specifically men of color. You have a higher chance of going to jail because of your status as a educated or successful black man. There wasn't a place that I went to in the jail that somebody said, you went to jail for that? You are X, Y, and Z. And there was a part of me that somebody actually told me before I went to court, you should get a lawyer. And I said, why? It's a misdemeanor charge. They said, you are a well-spoken man of color, an educated man of color. They would rather see you sit than somebody else because they know what you're doing. And I said, wow, I never even thought about it that way. Like somebody sat me down and said, Rashad, how does a judge sentence you? Okay, you did it, but how would a judge put you in jail for that? And you're out in the community making strides. Like you're out in the community, you're literally working in the jail. These young men of color love you. You're the one speaking. You're an advocate for the community. And I said, wow, I didn't even think about it that way. So there was another lesson I had to be always mindful of, is that the higher that you are, the target on your back, and I take the word target back because target means like somebody was out to get me because I put myself in that position. I want to be very clear about that. But I do think that, how can I word this? I do think that the higher that you go up that ladder of success, I think for some people, it's a much bigger prize to bring you down. It's a much bigger prize to bring you down. And I don't think that, I believe, honestly, if I walked in that courtroom with a different attire on, different verbiage, a different bio, I don't think I would have been in jail. Trust me. Trust me. I don't. So that's just a side note, man. There's so many lessons out of this. So many lessons.
Heck. Well, I'll pull out anyway. So, since a returning guest, this is the always classic 25, but you get the super special awesome question. So basically, if you were called to give the final keynote speech of your life that the entire world would have to sit down and hear for generations to come for the next 60 minutes, and it will be recorded and replayed forever, what would that message include? It doesn't even have, you don't have to get the full keynote, but just like the main message.
Oh, the main message for me is just quite simple, my good friend. The main message would be, you are more resilient than you'll ever believe. It would be sheer resiliency, that every individual has a level of resiliency in their life. Every individual has a level of bounce back. Every individual has a level of, I'm down, but I'm about to come up. Every individual has a level of, you can hurt me, but you can't kill me in them, but they can only find that when they experience hell. And then you have to say, when I experience hell in my life, how do I get from the bottom up to the top? How do I get from the bottom up to the top? And then I'll give you 4 quick things and I'll get out of your head. Number 1, you have to identify the obstacles to overcome. You have to identify the obstacles to overcome in your life. You have to say, what is the obstacle that's stopping me? What is the barrier? What is the hurdle that I need to get over? So for me, at one point, it was alcoholism. And then it was, finding Rashad from a mental health perspective. Identify the obstacles to overcome. And then the other piece to that puzzle is once you identify the obstacles to overcome, you begin to plan yourself going forward, like plan this incredible journey going forward. Like once you identify the obstacles, then you have to plan how you're going to be able to get over the obstacles. Identifying is just one piece to the puzzle, and then it's the plan. Like, how do I need to get over that obstacle? So, for an example, for me, resiliency, bouncing back from, alcoholism, the obstacle was that was the obstacle, but then I had to identify it. I had to identify that I was around the wrong people and places. And then once you plan it, one of the other things that you have to do is you have to celebrate the journey going forward, right? You plan the journey going forward. How do you plan to get around the obstacle? And then you begin to celebrate it, because I think far too many times that, and I was at this place too, that when people move forward in the resiliency phase, they find themselves being resilient, but they don't even celebrate it. And I think you have to celebrate like those victories in your life to help you, because when you feel like there is a victory, it gives you more momentum going forward, right? And then the other key thing, and I just talked about this, is forgiving the past. Some of us are so stuck on our past that you always will go back and allow that past to bring you down. So it's really identifying the obstacles, right? And I should have put forgiving the past second. Forgiving the past, celebrating the journey going forward, or planning the journey going forward, and then celebrating that journey. But it's all about resiliency. My whole life has just been about resiliency.
Beautiful indeed. Well, there you have it, folks. The wonderful Rashad Bowtie Mills, baby. That's right. Baby. Go out there, pick up a copy of the book, man. Pick out, man, purchase. You know what? Purchase 30 copies. You know what? Never mind. Forget 30 copies. Purchase 458,627 copies of the book. That's right. Purchase all the copies, baby. That's right. And spread it to the word, baby, because it's a message that the folks need to hear and read. My man's going to be coming out with the audio version in the coming months, and it's going to blow your socks off, baby, with full wind, baby. Full wind indeed. Well, for those
John,
who...
can I just say one final thing? Number one, again, I want to thank you for having me on the show and being able to just be on the show with you, which is always a fun and interesting time, and then being able to speak to your listening audience of the podcast. And I just want to make sure that people have the opportunity they have my social media, Rashad Bowtie Mills, all forms of social media. And it's RashadMills.square. And I'll spell it out, RASHAD, Mills, MILLS.square, SQUARE.site, SITE, /shop. That's the way to purchase the book. It's on Amazon as well. But I'm just quite be honest, as somebody that's self-published, prefer people do it this way as opposed to Amazon. And then here's the interesting thing. We were joking about buying the book. If somebody wants to buy the book right now, and they sort of mentioned that I was listening to podcast with my man Dom, and they want to purchase the book, get in contact with me via social media, and I'll make sure that I can give you some kind of discount, because that means, number one, you were listening to my main man's podcast, and then number two, that you're supporting the book as well. And it's my way of saying I appreciate you. I want to give you a discount as well. So I just wanted to say that to your listening audience.
Amen to that, folks. Well, there you have it. Go on ahead, reach out to the man directly. Get that discount, baby. I'm telling you, man. Get that $10,000 discount, because it's a $20,000 book. Oh, man. Yeah, my man's on his Baptist preacher swag. So any other parting words, man, before we close it out?
Just closing words is that you will just continue to be resilient in your life, and through the most difficult times of your life, don't ask the question, why me, God? What do you want me to learn from it? And just continue to be resilient, and nothing can stop you from reaching the things that you want in your life.
Hey there, you superstar. Thanks a bunch for making it this far in the podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. Heck, if you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed it. Be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast, so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things. And be sure to share this podcast with others that you think would enjoy it as well, because we want to inspire as many people as possible to live their dreams, embrace them, and to do something positive.